Hi guys, I'm going to show you today a quick composite that I did with the umbrella video. So this first picture that you're going to see here, I got from pexels.com, P-E-X-E-L-S. It's a free stock image site, so you can go on there and search for what you're looking for. Second image here is one that we shot in the studio really quickly. I wasn't really concerned with what it looked like, how flat it was, the light, none of that. And the reason being was because I knew this was just going to be a YouTube thumbnail. I wasn't really concerned with what it looked like too much, just like a general overview. So I'm just going to show you a really quick cutout. Go over here to the selection tool. I'm going to click object selection tool. This is a super cool new feature with the Photoshop CC, the new version 2020. So you just drag the box over your selection and it pretty much cleanly cuts out everything for you. So you see the marching ants. So I might have to go in a little bit. Oops. I'm going to zoom in here. I push Z to zoom. The space bar brings up my little hands and I can move things around. I'm going to go over here to the quick selection tool and just kind of clean that up just a tiny. I don't want all of that in there. Oops. Shift is your plus key on this, so that will add, and then if you want to subtract, you click the option key. That's on the Mac. These are about the same colors up here, so it might be a little bit tricky to get it to actually select it on its own. Let's see. But if it doesn't, you can always go up to your little tools up here, the Polygonal Lasso tool. You push the plus key and then you just drag it along. You can use so many different things to add to your selection. You can use the magnetic tool, the polygonal tool. A lot of people will use the pen tool as well. So we'll go over that. We can go over that in a different video. I'm just going to select this real fast, and I'm just adding to the selection. So we'll go over more ways of doing this in a different video. I just wanted to use the quick selection tools in this one. So I'm going to click the brackets over the right bracket and the left bracket will make your selection bigger or smaller. And then the option tool will make it the minus. So I'm just going to subtract here. There we go. And then I'm going to add here. I want this to select. I'm not really concerned with all the stray hairs and things. Again, if it just depends on what you are working on. So if this is something for a client, obviously your selection is probably going to have to be more advanced. And we can go into that in later videos. But for this one, just a YouTube thumbnail, very small, I'm not too concerned about it. Like my hair and all of that. Down, check out my leg. Looks like I needed a shave. All right. Select my shoe. I want my whole shoe in there, so go over this a little bit better. And the next thing I'm going to do is create a mask, okay? So that's good enough for what I'm doing. I'm going to create a mask. So I'm going to go over here and click this rectangle with a circle inside. It says add a mask. Do that. Now it gives me a black and white version of my layer. I didn't get my foot down here because it's going to be in the clouds, so don't worry about that. All right, I'm going to drag that over to my new image. I'm going to push Command T. Command T will give me the option to transform. You just drag the squares down. There we go. I'm just going to cover up that building back there. Okay, so I'm going to go to my background layer and I'm going to push Command J. That's going to duplicate that background. Then I'm going to drag it above my umbrella. I'm going to make a new mask. I'm going to push B. B is the brush. Over here you can see I have a black and a white. The black on my brush will take away from the selection and the white will add to the selection. So I'm just going to take away from this upper layer here because I want it to look like my foot is in the clouds. Okay, so I just erased like this top portion and I left it down here where my foot's in the clouds. Alright, so since our selection wasn't like 100% perfect, I'm going to go back into the selection, zoom in just a tiny. You see up here I've got a little bit, so I'm going to go to B to my brush and make it smaller. And it's on the black layer here, and that's erase. I'm just gonna pick up any like really super obvious areas. If this was for a client, I would go in to the individual pieces of hair and fix that. But since this is for a YouTube thumbnail and I'm just showing you very, very quickly, I'm not really concerned about that. And honestly, nobody's gonna notice because they're just gonna look at it pretty quickly. So I'm painting back where I think I took a little bit too much of my arm. To paint back, you go to white, okay? All right. That looks, yep, there's a little bit up here. And you can be super duper picky on this. Again, it just depends on if it's for a client, if they're going to print it, or what it's for. My arm looks a little jagged. My brush is a soft brush, so I don't have to get super close to it. Alright, the next thing that I did was I just ran an action on it. So I'm just going to flatten. I'm going to pull a gradient over the clouds to kind of make everything look like it's combined a little bit better. So I'm going to click a white gradient. I got my brush on white. I'm going to go down here to the create new fill and adjustment layer. I'm going to go up to gradient, and you see that the gradient it's a linear gradient, so it's going to go from, in this case, top to bottom. I can move it around, which I probably will put another gradient up at the top there for the umbrella, but I'm going to do one for the clouds. You can scale it. So we can talk about all this in more detail as we get more advanced, but I'm just going to erase it just a tiny bit up here. I want it more I like the blue up at the top. I'm going to bring my opacity down and brush it on just a tiny bit more. I think I erased it too much. Okay, and then I'm going to do one more at the top. So this time I'm going to select the bluer color. Oops, I need to go to my background. I'm going to select the blue color here, and then I'm going to pull a gradient up from the top. Linear is fine. I'm just going to switch the direction, pull it down. So you see how that changed, like the color on my face, the color on the umbrella, and it made it match the sky a little bit better. Bring my opacity up just a little bit. I'm going to brush that off of myself. Because I want me to stand out from the background a little bit more. I'm going to bring the opacity down a tiny. It's maybe a little bit blue. Okay, I'm going to flatten. I'm going to run a quick action on this. Where you find it? Okay. Oh, my Mac's about to die, so that's great news. All right, and then I use greater than Gatsby actions. Love greater than Gatsby. Let me go get my charger real fast. So an action is just something that someone else has created to help your workflow. You can totally do actions yourself. Maybe one day we'll get into that, but this is how you would do it. A lot of times they go into curves, and you just adjust your curves up or down. Highlight shadows, you can see your histogram here. So up here will be your highlights, down here will be your shadows and your darks, and you can literally just pull this around to make the whole image the same color. You can see I'm darkening the highlights here. You can see all the changes in there. All right, and then if you wanted to, you can invert this mask. So Command I, and then you can literally paint it on or paint it off of whatever you want to. So let me just up my opacity just a little bit so you can see that better. Just a subtle change with that one. Okay. I also, what I did was I did dodge and burn. So I went up here to my curves and I made a darker adjustment, and then I inverted that, and then I painted that on to some of these buildings. I painted it in the shadows. What I wanted, anything that I wanted darker and to stand out a little bit more, I painted it into that. And then I also made a highlighting curve layer. So I went to my midtones here and I just raised them up. And then I painted that on where you see the highlights and such. Okay. So you can see the difference there in the highlights and the shadows. Just, it's subtle, but I feel like it makes a big difference. And I'm trying to make this video, it's already at like 15 minutes, so I'm just trying to make it a little bit short, but you could go in and literally highlight everything that has a highlight and shadow everything that has a shadow. And it's subtle, but again, it makes a huge difference. Another thing that I like to do, I like to run one more action from Greater Than Gatsby. And it just adds like clarity and sharpness to the photo. If you wanted to do that yourself, you could in Camera Raw filter, but that's about it. That's the composite. So you get a good idea of just like what you would do. Take a simple standard photo in the studio. If you had a more advanced picture like this one here is pretty much equally lit. You don't see the sun coming in. The sun's coming in from the top to the bottom. So I do think it was important to take the photo with a flash from the top to the bottom. But sometimes in photos you have more shadows and whatnot. So you'll want to make sure that your shadows are matching up. So as you can see the light on the top of the buildings there, that's why I put my light at the top of the umbrella. And that's how light comes down naturally anyway. But if there were shadows, like extreme shadows to the right or to the left, I would make sure that I would have taken my initial image with the flash set to the right or to the left. So you do definitely want to pay attention to those things. This was just, again, a little bit easier composite, but there you go in a nutshell. 15 minutes later or 17 minutes later. That was actually a very, very quick one. These can take hours, honestly, but there's a general idea, guys. Thanks for watching.